Welcome to The Longer Game. If you're listening to a show about retail being reimagined. If you'd like to connect with The Longer Game, look for The Longer Game at thelongergame.com and on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn at The Longer Game. We're here to talk about retail, why it's changing, how it's changing, and what you can expect in the future. We're not trying to take ourselves too seriously, but we do want to know what that retail landscape is going to look like. I hope you enjoy your time listening to this podcast. We try to keep it as quick as possible because we don't want to waste your time, but we want to keep you informed. Thanks for tuning in. Now, here's the show. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Longer Game podcast, where we talk all things retail, focusing on the future of retail and what it holds for us. My guest today, I don't know why I said but my guest today, Tyler Wallace, is a co-founder and managing partner of the Lab Consult. I'll give him an opportunity to talk about that a little bit, and then we'll start talking about retail. Thanks for joining us, Tyler.
Happy to be here, Michael.
And by us, I mean me, because it's just me. Yeah,
Well,
so tell us about a little bit about your history over the past couple of years in the Lab Consult.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for that introduction. So a little bit about my history and background. So I recently left a career at Amazon after being there for 7 years. And to back up a little bit, because I know we're talking about retail and we're talking maybe a little bit about e-commerce today. So I first found my way to e-commerce in early 2010. I went in.
Same year as me. That's awesome.
Oh, well, I guess that was a good year for producing e-commerce people, right?
Or something like that. Yeah, I just hated my job, so I'm like, I want to get out.
Yeah, well, I didn't really know what exactly I was looking for, or that e-commerce was even that exciting back then. I bought a few things online, but I joined an online grocery delivery company. In the best way I can define it as Amazon Fresh, before Amazon Fresh was like a household name.
That is like pioneering. I mean, that's over 10 years ago, grocery delivery company. That's crazy.
Yeah, it was a really fun experience. And, it was really early days too. Like today, there's Instacart, and I feel like we order almost all of our groceries at our household online and just have them dropped off at the door. But back then it was a hard sell. Like we were up against the inertia of, I want to pick out my produce. I want to, touch and feel and see exactly what I'm getting and the quality. And I just don't know about something getting dropped off at my house. And
one of the things that I've talked about on the few episodes that have been here, but just talk that have been recorded, but also talk about to prospects, whatever the case might be, is that people still want that tactile experience. And so I don't think that we're going to go totally away from retail, but in order to succeed in e-commerce, you have to create some of that experience.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think that it's been interesting from my point of view, and even within kind of the Amazon arena, the pendulum has swung from like really emphasizing e-commerce to almost back to this omni-channel. Brick and mortar has a place that's important, is not going to go away. But yeah, anyways, I got my start there doing sales and marketing. And really, I think what gave me the itch to stick with e-commerce was understanding that, I'm not the kind of guy that I love to stand in checkout lines and go, spend my afternoon at a store, and seeing that you can order your groceries, in this case, in 15 minutes online. And then also the just the sustainability of it, in that, instead of, everyone in the neighborhood taking a weekly trip to the grocery store, you can have one person, one truck, make delivery every couple of minutes to each of these homes. And so you effectively reduce, many trips to the store and trips on the road.
I didn't even think about that, but that really, I mean, hopefully that's the case, but yeah, I mean, that's a really good point that it's something that, I mean, we could get real deep, like taxes are infrastructure less, saves on gas, saves on emissions, whatever, however deep you want to go. So that was a pretty good point.
Yeah. And
Tyler 1, Michael 0.
I mean, I'll just to emphasize my point there, my one on the leaderboard. I recently read a study from Amazon's 2020 sustainability report, and they had actually done it. They had environmental kind of scientists do an in-depth study on what the carbon emission impact was of ordering online versus going to a store.
Yeah.
And they found that on average, an average product bought online versus going to the store had 45% of the carbon footprint of that same product bought in the
Wow,
store.
I mean, I guess if you think about driving your car to the store, all it takes, driving back, maybe you forget something, you go back again, whatever the case might be. I mean, that's a big impact. And I also think our lives are very busy, even with the pandemic. You know, we're working. A lot of people are working from home. I've been working remotely for a little while, so it wasn't a big adjustment for me. And I, because honestly, I didn't want to go into an office when I started my agency. I'm like, and I don't want to pay for it. I want to be able to work from wherever I can. And I'd already started hiring outside of my city and outside of the U.S. So a lot of people are working from home more and are likely getting caught up in work, and so going out and getting out of your pajamas, it just takes a lot more effort. But you're able to do stuff like, hey, I've got a meeting, I can get groceries delivered real quick, just do an order, and then boom, I'm done.
Totally. So it can be efficient for the supply chain, but it's also this huge convenience for all of us as consumers, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, I worked in that company for a couple of years, and it was like, this is fascinating. I want to know more about business, and I want to get, better finance chops and et cetera. And so went to business school. And my foray into Amazon was during that time. I did an internship between my 2 years of business school
Okay.
and got hired on at Amazon. I think because in hindsight, I had that previous online grocery experience because I got placed with the Amazon Canada team to help them launch the
Oh,
shelf
okay.
stable grocery business in Canada.
Okay.
And it was super fun, and super interesting because I started early June and almost no work had been done. It was like, hey, this is this is the top level like market size of the opportunity, and the US has this, so we know we want it, but we haven't figured out any of the logistics to launch this yet. And by the way, we're launching in October of this year,
Go.
so go figure it out.
Awesome. Yeah, great.
So it was super fun, just going through that go to market strategy and figuring out, okay, like how do we start getting traction on this. Fast forward, I went back to Amazon after finishing my degree, and had a few different roles. I would say most notably, my first role was managing the marketplace business in the US for the PC or computers category. Interestingly, the largest category, it was a $4 billion category at the time, at least.
You and I have
On
talked about how
Amazon.
that's drastically changed.
Right, right. And then I spent some time on, what some folks in our communities might call the dark side of Amazon, which is Amazon retail. So I went over and led a retail
The dark
buyer team.
That's funny.
So I was on the buying team, competing against all the marketplace sellers, but working with some really fun brands in the home improvement and smart home space. Again, this is when
Okay.
like Amazon Alexa and Echo was just really young and early, so it was really fun to kind of ride the coattails of that wave.
Okay.
And then after a few years,
7 years is a long time at Amazon too. Correct me if I'm wrong.
yeah, it's interesting. They have this tool internally at Amazon called the old fart tool.
Okay, I was gonna
Love the
say you're
name.
some kind of
Love the
grandfather.
name.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, and so you can look up, you can plug in your like employee ID and see how long you've been there relative to all other employees. And
Oh
so I did
man.
that on like my last day, just for kicks. And I had been at Amazon longer than I think 96% of
Yeah.
employees at
Wow.
Amazon.
Round of applause, man.
Well,
That really is
Amazon.
impressive. I'm. It sounds like I'm being facetious, and I guess I am a little bit, but that really is impressive that you stuck around for so long. And it sounds like you moved around to a lot of different business units, so you got a lot of experience, which not all people always they don't always get that.
Yeah, and I think part of it is 7 years is a long time at Amazon. Certainly, there have been people that have been there 20, 25 plus years. But I think the other piece of it too is just how fast Amazon's grown. So when I went to work there were 5 office buildings in Seattle, and when I left, there were 38.
It's
And
crazy.
so I mean, just Amazon has been on a tear in terms of hiring, and they're over 1.3 million employees now. So that inflates the numbers a bit, but yeah,
Yeah,
seven
they're just
years.
eating up all of Seattle.
Yeah, it has. Certainly it'll be interesting. I haven't been there since things have started opening up post COVID because I've recently moved down to California. But I imagine I'm curious to know what traffic looks like. Traffic was a beast.
Well, I will say this because I have family that lives out in Seattle, and I've been there many times before I was even involved with anything Amazon. But the Viaduct totally got redone within the past couple of years. I don't know if you were still up there when it got
Hmm.
redone. Were you there when it was finished?
Yeah, I assume you're talking about like the viaduct that they bore through kind of the west side of Seattle.
Yeah, they put down underneath that was going along, and I mean, it was very scenic, but it
Yep.
was very old, and traffic would get backed up on there pretty often. So I don't know if that helped at all.
I think it did. I took that route a few times after it opened and it was a tunnel, and it was quite a bit faster. Probably saved 5 minutes on the
Okay,
commute consistently. So
and that makes a difference. That's like brushing your teeth, maybe taking a shower. I don't know. It depends on
yeah,
how quick you are.
adds up day over day. Um,
One
yeah,
of
and
the
then
things that oh, go ahead. You talk.
oh, I was just gonna say, and then my last role, I decided that I really did enjoy the marketplace side of the business,
Okay.
third party sellers, and so I went back to Amazon Canada and led a few different things. I led retail marketing for consumer electronics. I led our environmental compliance initiatives in Canada,
Okay.
but then. Most recently led the Canada marketplace business. And so that was really fun, just kind of taking a view over the business as a whole there for sellers in Canada, and really understanding kind of what processes would help accelerate the business and be good for sellers, attract sellers to
Okay.
selling on Amazon. And Canada is obviously still a younger marketplace than the US. And so
Yeah.
a lot of those decisions, were really key during this transitional period in Amazon Canada's life cycle. So that took me up to February of this year. Left Amazon, and as you already shared, am now happy and having a blast growing the lab consult.
Yes. And so, are you doing more consultative work, or what does that look like?
Uh, yeah. So we, I, what we do at the lab is we really help brands scale their business and operate, with a higher level of excellence and scalability. So a lot of it's honestly operating more like Amazon and applying some of
Okay.
the mechanisms and blueprints that we developed. My co-founder also spent 7 years at Amazon, and so what we don't do is we really don't do much of the kind of account management. We'll take over
Okay.
everything and run everything for you, but we work alongside brands, and we help really differentiated brands implement the data, the goals, the mechanisms to profitably scale their business and become these $100 million businesses in a few years.
Okay. And I think just overall, Amazon is as that's an area of specialty for both of us. You being in the belly of the beast, me, I've never been in the belly of the beast. I started selling, and then that's how I kind of started to make my way up. So maybe even like two different trajectories, and we're starting to meet in the middle now. But I think what's interesting about Amazon, there's a lot of stuff that you could talk about. I've had multiple conversations with people already today. It's only 3:30 my time, and I've talked about Amazon outside of like this project or this other project multiple times. And Amazon has really changed retail in general, partially I think because of the demands that consumers now have on brands, whether you're in retail, whether you're in e-commerce, whether you're on Amazon. They've changed a lot of those demands on what people expect. 2-day shipping, they expect great customer service, they want to take something back to a store and you know get their money back without, even if they spill juice on it or there's a big hole. You know what I mean? Like the expectations of that have changed. One of the things I'm curious about is, was it like that when you started working in the retail side of Canada? And is there a different vibe in Canada for the consumer overall versus the US?
That's a really interesting question, Michael. I would say in Canada, yes and no. So, first of all, it's interesting that e-commerce penetration, at least over the last few years, I was on that business, was much lower in Canada overall versus the U.S. And so, a lot of people still hadn't even heard or ever shopped on Amazon before. Let alone Walmart.com or Walmart.ca, I should say, and some of
Yeah.
these other big retailers. And so,
And that's literally just geography that has created that, right? It's a huge country, very remote places. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I know that shipping there can be very expensive because you're having to go over tundra or something like that to get like east to west is very would be very hard logistically.
Yeah, well, there is certainly some of that. So, what's interesting, what was interesting for me when I first went to the business is actually in Canada, almost all the population lives within 100 miles of the US border. So it's mostly kind of the
Okay.
strip with these hubs around Toronto, the Montreal area, and then, Vancouver, BC in the west, and, a
Hmm.
few places in between. But there certainly are the territories and in the more remote locations that are probably a lot more remote than what you would find in the US. So I do think that's one of the challenges. Another challenge is just that a lot of the brands, both US based brands as well as international brands, they just US is a much bigger market. And so if you're going to launch, whether you're in the US or in, Germany or Japan, and you're going to launch in North America, you're going to launch in the US first, and you're going to
Yeah.
build your business there, and then you're going to think about maybe going to Canada. And so for those reasons, a lot of the brands have just, hadn't thought about building much of a presence in Canada e-commerce,
Yeah.
at least as early as they did in the US. And I think that played into it. And then finally, there are, I think, some regulatory, so like Health Canada and some of these other agencies have a little bit different or nuanced requirements versus what you find in the
Okay.
US. So that's another,
I know
learning
going cross
curve.
border, if you've got someone in Canada, they're coming over to the US and it's like food or cosmetics or anything, FDA, starts to get involved. And then vice versa. A lot of people are like, in the US, what should I even expect going over to Canada? And I would also say, to your point, a lot of big brands ignored Amazon for a long time because they thought, oh, it's only $10 million. It's only, $20 million. They're in $1 billion business or industry. And so they're looking for the things that can really grow top line, not maybe a little bit more on the bottom line. But once it started to become more brand focused, people realize how impactful that could be. So don't overlook the what seems like the underdog. Canada might be a smaller, from an Amazon perspective, might be, I mean, in general, but smaller than US. I think Germany, UK, and even Japan, but it's still right across the border, not something to be ignored by any means.
Yeah, and you're spot on in terms of kind of the sizing there. I know that we're talking a bit about like the future of retail. I think one topic, since we're talking about Canada and the opportunity of selling on Canada, that is super key as brands think about international expansion. I think we're going to see more of this. Is that Amazon, and now some of these other retailers are making it so easy to sell globally, to sell cross border. Like
Mm-hmm.
Amazon has, the North America remote fulfillment program. There's global selling. Build international listings. Like there are all these different programs aimed to try to make it easier for somebody that maybe just has their FBA and e-commerce business in the US to be able to tap into these other markets.
Yeah.
And so it can be really attractive to just say, oh, well, I'm going to just use these other markets as like a sandbox to test different ideas, because it's kind of funny money. That's it's at this point I'm just testing it out, and I think that it's really good for validating the opportunity size for the brand. But
Okay.
where I've seen some brands um, inadvertently create problems for themselves are seeing it too much as, again, the sandbox to test different ideas. And I'll give a quick example of that.
So it's both, it's a double-edged sword, basically.
Yeah, it is a double-edged sword. So a quick example is, when I was over the consumer electronics marketing in Canada, we had a large cell phone manufacturer, household name, and they had decided that they were going to test a different profit strategy in Canada versus the US. And
Okay.
so the cell phones that they sold in Canada, very similar to the cell phones sold in the US, they were going to have a different markup structure and a more premium price point. The problem is it's effectively the exact same phone. I had like a different UPC, but it works the same. It actually works with the same carriers,
The
and
internet
so
is a thing, so people can look up pricing elsewhere.
yeah, and so there was that. And what ended up happening because of that transparency is you had nobody buying the Canada phones in Canada, and everyone in Canada was buying the US phones, right? Because it's like, if it's
Sure.
the same thing, why am I going to pay 20-30% more for the same cell phone? And so
It's
that
so
just
weird to do it so close together. I would think like do it in EU or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, and maybe that would have been a better test for this particular brand to try doing something overseas versus within such a proximity, close proximity. But yeah, I mean, even EU, even some of these other countries, like there's so much transparency. I think Amazon and a lot of these e-commerce platforms make that transparency so easy for consumers that, you can't get away with, oh, I'm going to have one returns policy or one pricing strategy in one country and then something, significantly better or worse for the customer across the border. I
Yeah.
feel like that strategy just doesn't work, and it's going to work less and less going forward.
That's interesting. And it's interesting because the marketplace, even though it's developed a ton, it still feels kind of new, just the whole marketplace concept. And there are so many channels popping up now. And one of the things that I've seen is looking at the amount of there's a lot of focus on the US market, understandably so, because it's big. But looking at the EU, there are a ton of marketplaces that are even regional to the country. Like I know there's one in Sweden that has, I think, 70% of the market share. I was talking with someone who runs was part of a company that basically takes your catalog, creates kind of a main catalog, and pushes it out to these places. But they're doing it, I think, more focused in Europe and less in the US. There's a lot of companies I know here in the US that are like, we can help list you on Amazon.com, Walmart.com, Newegg, uh, Sears was an option at some point. I actually, believe it or not, when I was selling, because that's how I started, I was selling product on Sears Marketplace and it was terrible. But I was like, just try it and see what happened. I remember submitting a request on the seller side saying, hey, there's incorrect information on the page. It's saying this thing is a 12 pack or a 6 pack, but really it's a single. And the message I got, the automated message said, hey, thanks for submitting this. We'll get back to you within 7 business days. And I was like, 7 business days?
It's an
That's a
eternity.
that's a long time. Like, there's going to be a lot of refunds, and there wasn't a lot of traffic. But anyway, there's so many different marketplaces. And so, like you said, there's a lot of transparency across these marketplaces. Now, I know there's even, we all see like Kayak and stuff like that are comparing prices for flights, but I know there are apps and technologies that can compare prices across the market. And if anything, Amazon's probably got the best ones internally because they're tracking your product prices on your website, on other places, to determine, hey, are you selling the product for too much on here, so that there
Mhm.
is, I know, I don't know so much about regulation around price parity. I think like two retailers decide to price match. I don't know if that's like illegal. I feel like I've heard that before. Tell your friends it's truth, because I just stated it, and it's going to be on the internet soon. So like my daughter believes everything on the internet, so maybe she's going to come and tell me that someday. But they're able to, because of the advances in technology, they're able to utilize that to say, hey, we want a consistent message, and the message could be pricing or premiumness. We want to see that across the board.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. And I mean, your example of like, we'll get back to in 7 days. It's interesting because I feel like when we were kids, that would have been status quo. And today that's just atrocious.
I
Everything is
was
sped up.
shocked, and that was like 5 years ago. I was like, what, 7 business days? This marketplace is going down before 7 business days. I was hopeful that it would be something, but I just don't think it really ever didn't really amount to much. I think it was kind of like a Sears was dying, and they're like, oh, let's try a marketplace, but we're not really gonna put all our effort into it, and just probably look bad going down. But when it comes to, so some of the evolution that you've seen, or some of the evolution we're talking about, is the consumer demand. Talk about, and by consumer demand, I'm not talking about the demand of product quantity. I'm referring to the demands they have as a consumer, how they expect things to go because of some of the advancements that Amazon's made. Talk about, please talk, I'll be nicer. Please talk about the evolution of Amazon over time and how they've kind of changed some of those things.
Yeah. I can give a couple examples. I'll talk about it from, the retail perspective, the retail environment at large. And then,
And if you want to
also,
get more e-commerce, that's fine too. It's just everything doesn't have to be, all retail, but yes, I think there's a global change that's happened.
yeah, well, I think it's interesting to consider like the overall retail landscape, and then we can chat more about Amazon Marketplace specifically. But overall in retail, back when Amazon launched the Prime program with 2-day free shipping, Like that was a differentiator. That was a game changer, and not just the free aspect because they already had super saver shipping and,
Sure.
for meeting a certain price threshold, but the 2 days was a big deal. That was super fast. And now you look at Amazon and, they're aggressively rolling out 1 day shipping, same day shipping. They had the Amazon Prime, the Prime Now program
Yep.
that's been consolidated with Fresh and other programs they have. And so it's really become the expectation that things are delivered super fast. And I remember last year, 2020, when Amazon and everybody was hit with all of these supply chain issues with
Yep.
COVID, right? And so the 1 day, 2 day promises got extended, and that was really painful. Myself as a customer, I was like, "What? I have to wait 4 days to get my, you know, to get my like shiny
Soap.
new electronics, like
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
completely,
I need these headphones right now.
exactly. Yeah. And so we've all been trained that way. But I think that that's interesting as we think about kind of the e-commerce and brick and mortar physical and omni-channel experience before, and kind of going back to even grocery and apparel and soft lines and some of these other categories. It was like, if I think that there's a high likelihood I'm not going to like something, I'm not going to like its quality, I'm not going to like how it fits on me, I don't want to deal with a back and forth of like getting something shipped in 2-3 days and trying it
Yep.
on and shipping it back in 2-3 days and buying something. That's going to take way too long. And I
There's
think
less
that
efficiency in that type of shopping per the category.
right, right. And I think that what has really brought e-commerce on a more level playing field with brick and mortar over the last few years is this acceleration of both the delivery times, going to same day, 1 day deliveries, as well as the reverse logistics of like, hey, if I don't like
Ah,
this, I
yes.
can drop it off at a Kohl's or an Amazon Locker or wherever else. I can drop my Walmart.com order off at a Walmart store and I can get refunded right away. In some cases, I don't even need to have the box or a receipt with me. And I think that both sides of that, the customer as well as the reverse logistics speed has made this expectation that like you can take a bet on buying something online, but
Yeah.
it's also created this expectation that anything else online has that same SLA, that same speed. And so that's why I think that whether you're fulfilled by merchant or you're just your own Shopify store, there are so many of these warehousing and third party logistics companies using really advanced technology that are popping up and serving the customer fulfillment for a lot of these digitally native brands today, because it's hard to do that. It's hard to be that fast. It's hard to have those reverse logistics if you're like a mom and pop shop shipping out of your
Yeah.
store. So it's really interesting how
Companies like
that's
Stitch
changing.
Fix do reverse logistics and just provide the return envelope in there because they're kind of already expecting you to do that anyway. And
Yep.
then if you buy everything, you get a discount. My daughter was very excited about getting her first Stitch Fix box with her stylist, which she was, you know, very poignant about. It was poignant when she pointed it out to her friends that my stylist picked this out, um, which I thought was funny. But I think what you said about reverse logistics and the advance in technology that's allowed people to, the companies or brands to do this, retailers, when you are a consumer and you know nothing about supply chain, you know nothing about how the company works, buying something online and saying return it in the store, that makes total sense. And what I think a lot of consumers don't know, on the back end, having to connect a .com system of a marketplace to then connect with Walmart's in-store system or even Walmart's their vendors that they have. I think it's like supplier. They call them suppliers, but their suppliers, having that be bought online and then going to return something like that in store, like that takes sometimes multiple technologies to talk with each other. And if you don't have something that can directly integrate, like integrations is something that many softwares have now. I use Slack, that integrates with ClickUp, which integrates with Google Drive. And so having those integrations is key to making things run more efficiently. Sometimes having integrations with your competitors, like ClickUp having a Asana integration, they pretty much do very similar things. I'm not promoting one or the other, but if one of them wanted to sponsor us, I would happily promote their products online. But they're having to create these integrations to make life easier. And that's now even becoming more of an expectation But to think about even internally two technologies that are different talking to each other, that likely took a lot of work and engineering and dollars too.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's such a great point to emphasize the integrations in how you can really create your own customized tech stack affordably and elastically today,
Yeah,
right? Like you don't have to go raise money to get these awesome integrated
right.
services that make you feel like a top-notch service to your customers.
That's one of the things that we have I've really tried to focus on is there's a lot of buzz about automation and AI. And one of the things that I mean, just even in the Amazon industry alone, like from an advertising perspective, but just in general too. And I think a lot of people are expecting Isaac Asimov's iRobot to come true, and the robots are going to turn against us when the technology is it's getting better, but it's not to that level. They're not going to be sentient beings, and I don't know that they ever would be. At least I'm not nervous about it in my lifetime. Maybe my daughter will have to deal with it, and best of luck, sweetie. I hope things go well. If you're listening to this and it's the year 3000, I will be very surprised. But back to my point, because that was a very long tangent. When it comes to that technology, it's not as I don't think it's as advanced as possible, or as it really is being portrayed as. And so I think there's a lot of people saying we got automation, and it's really just two things talking to each other. All algorithms essentially start out on a spreadsheet. It's a bunch of formulas, put together, and so there's sometimes a disconnect of what this thing actually is and what it can do. But having softwares that can communicate with each other and can automate tasks for you to make your service better, or um, if you're an e-commerce development agency and you're helping someone integrate a chat into there. I was just on a call today where people were talking about integrating a chat feature called Gorgeous onto an e-commerce website, and it's helps them with conversion rate because the person pops up and they could be like on a fashion website, hey, I love Gucci, and I like going shopping in the weekends, tell me about what you need help with. And having that picture and that text there helps people convert, or increases conversion rate. But getting old companies to understand that and implement that new technology, it's difficult to do, but it's something that has allowed us to, I think, get more out of what we're going for. So those integrations and advances in technology is what's also driving some of the demand for increased services, things like that. And I don't know, do you think that a company has to build that technology or just integrate it from somewhere else?
Yeah, such an interesting question. And first of all, I just have to say I love that you not only quoted iRobot, but that like the author's name off the top of your head. That's a very
Yeah,
cool.
I just have it on sitting on my bookshelf. I don't know why, but I have a very uh, specific memory about reading it, but also seeing the version that I think had Robin Williams in it, where that you found out
Hmm.
like his face came off. Like that just really stuck with me. So I
Wow.
haven't seen a lot of movies in the past 10 years, so don't ask me about any of the Marvel things. Don't ask me about anything like that because I will not know.
Yeah. But totally getting back to your point about these integrations and the data that they can add. I mean, like, don't get me wrong. Even at the lab console, like we start with data, and we see that as like step numero uno, and the most important thing to get in place to be able to drive strategic insights. But it's like I'm a strong believer that you can't just rely on data, and you can't just rely on the processes and the tools and the systems, because inevitably something is going to break. And maybe if somebody is listening to this in year 3000, that won't be the case.
Oh my
But
gosh, if that actually happens, I will all be dead, so it doesn't really matter.
yeah, I guess not. But even at Amazon, like people, I remember when I went to Amazon, it was known as like, oh, you're working with big data. That's like the place where they have data points on everybody and
They just
everything
have
that they
big data
do.
lakes, and everything goes into the data lakes, and it's like it was like the dark web back in the day. It was the dark data.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure all sorts of ideas, and it's not just Amazon. You pick any of the big tech companies out there, but the real, I mean, and first of all, like it is true to an extent. Like Amazon has tons of data, and everyone in Amazon is expected to use data in
Okay.
making decisions and making arguments. But at the same time, you can't just rely on data. And there were so many times, you know, and this is, I think, really core to how Amazon operates and Jeff Bezos operated, is that you have to use those customer anecdotes to find out where the data and the tool and the integration and the process is not working. And you're always going to find something if you look hard enough. And so I am concerned, I guess, going back to your idea of this double-edged sword, that with as easy as it's making, integrating all of these different services to just run your business on autopilot,
Hmm.
if you relied if you get too comfortable with that, like we're going to run our retail business or our e-commerce brand just on autopilot with all these integrations, you will likely not catch, customer issues until it's no snowballed into a really big issue. And so I'm a big believer in having the right audits and the right mechanisms in
Okay.
place so that you can like do non-scalable, non-automated things on a regular basis, diving deep enough into the business to find out what's not working with those processes. And I mean, hopefully it gets better. Hopefully that, one day everything will just be so fine-tuned that it'll be turnkey and easy, but
When
it's not.
I don't even think that's gonna be the case because, and a lot of people get scared talking about robots, but humans were created to have other interactions with humans. I don't think that will ever go away. I don't know that we can change our DNA like that. So I feel that someone is going to at some point want to go into a store and try something or have an experience. And I think as technology grows, a lot of new companies think, what is our brand differentiator? And it's this new technology, it's this new thing. Maybe your brand differentiation has nothing to do with technology and has everything to do with creating an experience, because people like stories. Experiences create stories. People can share that. It's remembered to them, even if it is anecdotal for them. They remember it and they come back. And so creating an experience based on emotion, knowing that yes, there's a lot of data behind people purchasing. 28% of people are purchasing in 3 minutes or less on Amazon now, which is just crazy. So very, very quick decisions, but people still want to be seen and noticed and have experiences that they're going to remember. So your brand differentiation does not have to be technology or your tech stack per se. I think a combination of both, utilizing tech. My viewpoint is utilizing technology so that you can do the human things better or provide more of a human touch.
I agree wholeheartedly with that, Michael. And I recently wrote about on Amazon Marketplace, it's entering this what I think is a golden age of brand builders. And I think that over the last decade plus, Amazon has really focused on selection through resellers, through white label, and they now have sellers and brands all over the world. And it's easy to find exactly, what gadget or gizmo you're looking for on Amazon and
Yeah.
get a competitive price point on it. But I think what you emphasize there, the machines can't do that, algorithms and arbitrage formulas can't do, is tell that brand story and tell
Yes.
a story about what is it beyond just the functionality of a product that you are buying when you buy this brand. And I'm really excited for the investment and the focus that I think is going to help tell more of those stories. I think that's where brands are going to have to differentiate themselves over the next decade.
I could not be in more agreement. And with all the advances in technology, we have still not found a way to create more time. So we're out of it. I was thinking about that while I wasn't even listening to what Tyler was saying. I'm sure it was important. Just kidding. Tyler, tell people where I think that was a great ending. And honestly, we could even talk more about brand at great length, but tell people where they can find you if they're looking for you. Is it under a tree? Is it in a car? You tell them.
Occasionally, either of those places, but I think the
Okay.
easiest place to find me would be on LinkedIn. I'm usually on LinkedIn pretty regularly. Certainly, if you're interested, you could go to our website, thelabconsult.com. But yeah, I'm
And I'm
happy to chat
pretty
with
sure we'll
anybody.
have some stuff below so you can link to that. So you can talk to Tyler. I'm actually going to talk to him about some stuff too. So anyway, thanks for joining us on the longer game. I have no good outro, so that's it. Take care.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks. Thank you for listening to the longer game. We genuinely appreciate your time. And if you want to connect with us, please reach out to thelongergame.com. You can fill out a contact request form there. You can also find us on majority of the social media platforms, except for Twitter. That's the only one that we're not really on. This show is brought to you by my agency, Cartology. We're helping brands accelerate growth and become profitable on Amazon. If you'd like to know more, go to thinkcartology.com, fill out a contact form, and we'll get on the phone. That's what it's all about, connecting with you and building a relationship. This show is also brought to you by ArchDevOps. They're the ones that are helping make all the logistics of this podcast happen. We are so thankful for them. If you want to get your podcast up and running and you want to automate as many things as possible, go to archdevops.com. That's ArchDevops.com and reach out to them. They can be super, super helpful. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you have a great rest of your day and be blessed.